Your time is valuable. We honor your time. We're so grateful you're here. And we just wanted to real quickly set up a few little guidelines as we go along. We are really not very good at being talking heads. We love your engagement. And this is your hour as much as it is ours. So we welcome your engagement, your feedback. And at the end, we do open it up for real dialogue. So you will not have to sit through a lot of talking heads to really participate. This is your time. And if we're not growing together, then why are we here? So thank you so much. And, we wanted to start off with just a few prompts because to get us in the right frame of mind, we think it's really important. So Michael, do you want to start us off?
So yeah, I think that kind of where we want to kind of kick this off is that grit tends to be this thing that brings out different emotions in different people. So my question really is when we mention that, what comes to mind? Is it something that's really hard? Is it something that is exciting? Is there some fear there? What really comes up? What is the feeling around this idea of grit? And it is something that's certainly being discussed in various different levels and from very different perspectives. Some saying is, get away. I don't need this grit stuff. And other are like, let's go get it. Let's actually run that ultra marathon. But there's also this other piece too. And to me, it is, when was the last time you did something that was going to be really hard to do? When did you step into that thing knowing that you may end up failing at it? And that to me is where grit comes into play.
Yeah, so we actually want to ask you guys, please turn on your mics or join us in the chat. We want to know, when is the last time you did something really hard? And we're not it just took, maybe it took an hour, but maybe it was the hardest hour you'd ever imagined. Maybe it took 5 years and it's that startup you've been working on. So, or the conversation you've been avoiding. So what does that look like for you guys? We'd love to hear from you.
Well, this is Sharon. Last November, I decided to enroll in a data analysis boot camp, which is totally outside any type of project that I had undertaken in the past. And I'm still working on it. It's supposed to be a 6-month program, and I'm still working on it. So fortunately, University of North Carolina does not have a deadline of finishing it. I mean, I didn't participate in the last project, but I'm still pursuing it, still working on it.
Good for you, though. Good for you for challenging yourself. And that is grit, right? You got to stick with it, stay motivated enough to see it through and do something that's hard. Make yourself think in another dimension that you're not used to. If you are language and arts, that might mean taking on data and math or whatever that is. It's going to have that neuroplasticity for you. That's fantastic. Are there any other examples we have? Like, what is grit? What's the hardest thing you guys have done? Michael, what's something hard you've done?
I'm gonna let Paul first because he's on deck here.
Oh, Paul, please.
Yeah,
Hi.
Michael volunteered me. Good morning. I'm making changes in my personal life. It's something I've avoided for a long time. And the outcome is unknown. I kind of think about the Indiana Jones at the Temple of Doom. He has to take the step, and he's reading the book. But then being a human being, there's fear, so he runs back and he throws dirt across it, and it reassures him that no matter what happens, he's going to be okay. It may not work out the way you want, but you're going to be okay. And I have really good days with that, and I have really days where the rug gets pulled out from underneath my feet. You just got to get up and keep going. trust the process.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Paul, kudos to you. And thank you for sharing that. Guys, we are not speaking as like people who were newly born yesterday. I promise you, I have blown up a life that didn't feel right for me, that someone else would have thought looked like an honored, esteemed life. And I'm starting over in a very different capacity. So Paul, I totally feel you, and the outcome unknown. Isn't that the truth with all of us, guys? Outcome unknown. We can do as much as we can to see it to a destination, but the truth is outcome unknown. That's part of the scariest shit part, but it's also part of the exciting, that ultimately we are powerful creators. And sometimes creation involves destruction. So good for you guys for those examples. Anyone else want to share?
Hey, Suzanne,
Hi.
am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are live.
I've just joined, so I don't know what's going on. Can you please let me know?
Yes, so we are having a conversation about grit and the importance of building it in your life. And so we open it up for dialogue at the end, unless we're asking for engagement. So definitely, if you're new to us, welcome, join us. We are talking about grit and the importance of it in your life. And we will open it up at the end for open dialogue as well. So
Okay.
great, thank you. And when you are not speaking, if you could turn your microphones on mute, that would be fantastic. So we are living in an era where, let's be real, the media tells you that doing hard things is not the way to go. We're really, really looking at a culture that is told to take the easy way. We glorify life hacks. The word hack implies shortcuts. And what happens when our life becomes a series of shortcuts? What does that do to who we are and what we're becoming? And what does taking on big challenges do? What has it done for you in your growth and development? Michael, what about you?
Well, I know for me, a lot of what it's been about is what I discover about myself in that process. And it's one of the reasons why I like how you got kind of brought up this whole like idea of the hack is how do we bypass that challenge so we can actually get to the other side easier, but then you kind of lose the whole value of the journey between here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get being more efficient. I get, being able to do less or do more with less, but in the process, are we really like missing the point? And that's where, being willing to step up to do that hard thing is really important. At least to me it is, because that is where my growth is. Well, when we were preparing for this, I know, Suzanne, you and I were talking about kind of where did this show up? And for me, hiking is kind of the thing that I do. It's kind of the vehicle for my business. And we went on a hike with a group about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they wanted to make sure that they went up the easy route and then came down the steep route. And it seems like that seems to be everybody's approach is let's actually take the easy route up and then actually take the steep route down, because then it'll be easier. For me, I like going the other way around is let's take the steep route first. Let's get that out of the way. Mostly because I know, at least in that particular case, that I can actually see when I get to the top a lot easier, because yes, it's steeper. It's going to get me there faster, but I know it's going to be harder. And I'm going to grow more. I'm going to get stronger if I tackle that hard thing first. And it's more than just that one time too, is that grit is not that, yes, I woke up and took a cold shower this morning. It's what do you do every time
Yeah.
is where the grit comes in. So that is my approach when I do this is, yes, I take a cold shower every time, but also let's take that grit route, that this is going to suck route, because I know what it's going to feel like at the top.
Yeah, guys. So, I mean, we are living in an era where we think cold showers is grit. Guys, look at that. As a culture where we are, we think that getting up at, to go to the gym at 5 a.m. is real grit. And it's hard and it sucks when you're doing it and you don't feel like it. Doing things you don't feel like doing does require grit. It does. Make no mistake. But what does that give you? It's so much more than the muscle you develop at the gym, right? It's the confidence that you can overcome obstacles. It's the tenacity you develop, knowing that nothing, not even your own self-will, is going to sabotage your success. It's the hunger you develop in realizing, if I can do this, I can do more. And if I can accomplish little things, then I can accomplish medium-sized things. And then what the hell am I waiting for? Go big or go home. This is that avalanche of grit that develops. And Michael, do you think this means we love pain?
I certainly think pain is a motivator for sure for many people, and most of the people that I've worked with is this too painful for me to stay here? So what am I willing to do to get out of it?
Oh, guys, think about that. So the people in grit, it's not that we love the pain that we're going to go through. It's that we're in pain now. It's the stalemate that holds us back in life. It's the never moving forward, never growing again beyond where you are now. It is the threat of complacency, the threat of average, the threat of not achieving your dreams.
And there's this other thing too, and it's one of the things that grit is necessary for, is we can stay in that comfort zone. We can stay in that place where we are stagnant, where we are stable and safe, but we don't grow there. We don't learn more. We don't actually build some of those characteristics that you talked about, perseverance, tenacity, etc., when we're staying safe. So to me, grit is more than just putting your toe out. It's actually like stepping out into that discomfort zone. So for me, that was actually starting a business outside of also having a job at the same time, and putting my voice out there, like what we're doing here, is that to me requires, and once again, go jump in a cold lake. Awesome, you did it. That's not grit though. We've been now doing this for 18 months.
Yeah.
That to me is grit, when you are willing to actually give that the long term and push through, even when you don't feel like, am I getting anywhere? Is this the right thing for me to doing? Is there some fear there? And having the courage to overcome it. And oddly enough, kind of, what we're really kind of getting at here is, what do you gain by this? And for me, it's a lot about self-discovery, what I'm capable of, whenever I actually push past that boundary with the level of grit that is necessary to not only see the barrier, but actually have the will, the momentum, the purpose, the guidance to actually get beyond it, and knowing that there's gonna be so much more that I will be capable of falling through on later.
How many of you here, we have Sharon that gave us her example. Thank you so much. How many of you here, type in the chat, how many of you here, and Paul also, thank you, are taking on something hard? And Michael, I will push back a minute, because you can't always stay comfortable, because sometimes the world moves. And there you were in your comfort zone and the bottom falls out. And you're like, shit, I gotta move. I'm not okay if I stand still. Guess what? Stand still for some isn't an option right now, or it isn't an option anymore. So, what do? The data analysis boot camp. Oh, and business startup. That's a startup. That is a big, big step. Guys, I'm a believer that starting your own business is one of the biggest personal growth. I'll even use the word there, personal growth hacks on the planet. You learn so much about yourself, your weaknesses, because it's all on you. Yeah. Completing a book. Oof. That's a big deal. Absolute. Oh, honey, yes. 20 test attempts. Wow. Simon, I love that example, right? You're up there with Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, right? How many of you failed something more than 3 times and you get back up and you do it again? 4 times, you get back up and do it again. 5 times, you get back up and you do it again, because this is meant to be, because you see yourself on the other side, because you know that you have to go through something to get to where you're going. That's grit. That's grit. Thank you for those of you who are just joining us. We are in the middle of a conversation on grit, and we love for your engagement. We will definitely prompt you for your engagement, and we will open it up for dialogue at the end. We're blessed and honored to have you. So, as we dive into this and look into the spirit of grit, what do you think it is? Yes, and we're going to go there right now. What do you think it is that holds us back from doing big things? Michael, have you ever held yourself back from doing a big thing?
Only like every other month at least. So I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities, because for me, I know that one of my saboteurs is avoidance, and it's because I don't know if I can succeed or not. And it can fall into this game of 1 out of 10 things I'll say yes to, but those things that I am tackling are going to be the things that will require me to grow and discover and be more myself. And even just in this past week, I've had to have those hard conversations, those ones that I would much rather avoid, rather than get in there and say, this is not working, it's time to move forward. And knowing that that's actually in the balance of what my business is looking to create is necessary. And it is that fear. It's the fear of failure. Absolutely. And I know for me, many times it's as much, if not more, the fear of success than it was the fear of failure.
Guys,
so thank you, Paul, for that trigger. That totally is part of it. And that has been in my history too, is that right on the cusp of something great, and then something that I've chosen sabotages that whole process. And
now, did you hear him, guys? He said something. He said started something which is external oriented, and then he said that I chose, and he owned it, because ultimately we sabotage ourselves. It's so true. Yeah. Michael, how long had you been avoiding having that tough conversation?
Probably 2 months.
2 months. Okay.
I've been thinking about it, and it got to the point where it was keeping me up at night. It's like, this has got to stop. I had to avoid the pain of keeping things the same in order to actually face the pain of making a change for something different.
Yeah, guys. So there again, Tony Robbins talks about this too, as one of the primary motivators of people, believe it or not, is pain. And that you have to, you really have to move yourself out of the state of pain, or pain is the greatest motivator of movement. And we don't want you to have to get that far, but often that is it. So for some of us, it may be the pain of standing still. the pain of knowing we've let ourselves down. Robin Sharma talks about this betrayal that happens in us, because deep inside, when we give up on ourselves, when we give up on our dreams, deep inside, there's a disappointment that comes from betrayal, because we know we've betrayed our highest self. We've betrayed our greatest good. We've betrayed the potential we know that lives within us by not going for great, by not taking on difficult things.
There's another point that I want to tackle in that too, is it's one of the things that Steve Kotler talks about, is we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to the level of our practice. So when we're going for great, we need to practice what we're going to do when we get there every day. I think that that's key to this. It's not a one and done sort of thing. So just like your physical health is not, I'll go do one bench press and I'll be good. It really is practicing for what is that big goal I'm going to be going towards, and taking the small steps that's building me to get there. I know that that's a core fundamental idea of what Lifebook is about, is set your goal, yes, but then get into the now and start taking action towards that, no matter how small or how big the step is, to move in that direction. And to stay the course requires then the grit, knowing that you have that purpose at the end that you're looking to accomplish, that you have that mission, you have that vision, that destination in mind, and that it's not what you're doing now is not going to just magically get you there. Something needs to shift, something needs to change. And that change, moving from that static space into movement, requires us to break that friction that's keeping us where we're here. And that then, I mean, grit, if we get down to the physicality of it, that sandpaper is grit. It's something that will actually, if you rub it on your skin, it's going to hurt. As we're actually making something better, it does take away layers of stuff that's in the way. And I think that and also remembering that, I'm not sure if anybody's ever done woodwork here. Once again, you don't take that sandpaper and go, one swipe and I'm done. It requires some work in there. You've got to actually work at this over time. So to me, just like balance is not something that is a instantaneous thing. It's something that happens over time. And grit is another one of those things that requires you to consistently put into practice that which is going to get you where you want to be, because you are pulled, you are drawn to get there. And when motivation fails, grit is what actually allows you to overcome that obstacle.
That's right. And I think, as you know, both Paul and Sharon were saying, motivation will fail, right? It will not always be there. The inspiration, that drug, the oxytocin that we crave, and that instant reward feeling, guys, we're so sorry. That's not the playing field of grit. Grit is really the willingness to go without for that bigger win. And I know that we're right now in a period where we felt like it took grit just to get through the last few years. And as we look at the economy and some different pressure points that many of us are experiencing, grit is suddenly coming to the forefront of a lot of influencers' conversations, I'm finding. And Michael and I scheduled this, in December? Guys, we know this is the stuff of building. These are the building blocks. This is going against the grain, which anyone who is committed to living an intentionally great life, that's the steps you're going to take. You're going to live against the grain, because life will happen to you or for you, but you get to choose. Your perspective is everything. So I totally believe in that. So, we talked about the fear of success. there's also the fear that nothing we're doing is moving us in the right way. There's also that. And there's one other compliment I'd like to add to this conversation on grit, and that's the practice of grace. Guys, if it doesn't happen overnight, if it doesn't happen at all, Edison on the 99, zillionth try. For those of you that don't know, he invented the light bulb. And it took him many, many tries to finally achieve a win. Far more than you, Saman, on those tests, right? So
Yeah.
give yourself grace. It's okay. And I prefer people who have grit with their grace. When you're ready, you pick yourself up and you start again. Guys, have you ever? Yeah, please.
And it certainly comes to this space of, because I know that at least for me, when the failure came in, there is a fair amount of shame, guilt, or regret. And it's interesting because I'm doing like 2 different programs right now, both positive intelligence, which is if you're feeling bad about it, then you're doing something wrong. But also I'm reading a book called The Power of Regret. And in both cases, a lot of what they're talking about is find the lesson in it.
Mhm.
And that to me also kind of falls into the space of both the grace and the grit combined, is that when you fall down, it's not just, to me, it is partially get yourself back up, but then also figure out, why did you fall down the last time, maybe the last 100 times, and then aim to fall down less or fall down more gracefully.
Yes, guys, in the startup world, I've heard it said many times, failure is a feature. It's not a bug. Get that? It's a feature, because in that are these inherent lessons, infinite lessons on who you are, how you showed up, what worked, what really didn't work, and you probably shouldn't try again, right? What are the external factors you relied on that may not have been reliable? Like, failure is a feature of all of our lives, and it is a growth. Talk about a growth hack. What more do you need, right? This is a great college degree. So have you guys ever tried something big that you failed at? Or are you risk adverse? Type in the chat or let us know, please. Sharon.
Yeah, I feel that I'm getting really good at failing right now, and I'm finding it harder to move forward from that quickly. Like maybe it used to take me 2 days to get over it, and now it takes me 2 weeks. So I'd be interested in finding out if anyone has some ideas on accelerating that recovery process to move forward again.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where I wanted to go to next, too.
Yeah.
Actually, talk about that structure, is that grace is necessary, yes, forgiving yourself and moving forward. But if we kind of come back to one of the more practical focuses on what many people see as grit, is if you work out 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to injure yourself. It's going to happen. You also need to build in recovery into this too, because I get the whole hustle grind concept of you got to go. But even in a workout space, you don't gain muscle, you don't gain strength during the workout. You actually rebuild in your recovery time. When you're sleeping, when you're actually doing active recovery, is when you become stronger. So with that idea of recovery time, on the emotional side, on the spiritual side, on the intellectual side, what are you building in for recovery?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is as important many times as the workout. If it's that you do an after action review, for some people, that is what actually gets them to the right place. In other ways, it's the idea of, after that action has happened, that you reimagine what happened if it went the way you wanted it to. and make that part of your practice. If it's in meditation, mindfulness, or prayer, is how would you have wanted it to work if it worked the right way? Because then you're training your brain, you're asking the universe, you're actually on many different levels actually seeing the outcome that you're aiming for and revisualizing for that, rather than this idea of aiming for failure isn't really what at least my approach is not what the gain is. Getting really good at failure. I like how you kind of pointed, use that terminology, and maybe it's a matter of changing the words. Is that I'm learning from more failures every day is different than I'm getting good at failing. It's a little tweak, but the words we say, especially in our own minds, are really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Michael is known as our tool guy, right? So he's all about these practical, applicable tools. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an app for that, although many times there is. But in this case, it also means, Sharon, and for the rest of you, what are your systems? What does that process look like after a failure to you? And this applies not just in your professional life, but personally, right? So what are the systems and practices that you have? We talk a lot about habits here. So I would look at not just your physical, but your mental systems. And what is the thought process you're going through after an event? Like, where does your mind go immediately? And what in that thought process can be tweaked as well? So yes, to Michael, he's saying that positive appreciation of just tweaking how you're thinking about failure. Do we have a learning system that's being, that's happening here? And as well as, I know that we have survived through an era where things were just business, and it's just business. It's not personal. I called bullshit on that a long time ago. Business is very personal. It is where how many people feed their families. It is their hopes and dreams of impacting this world, especially with so many coaches. It is their hope and dream of impacting the lives of others and having that ripple effect on the world. So we know business is personal here. But that being said, you cannot use that as a value judgment against yourself. Really, what works best in those situations is to judge yourself based on your intentions. And knowing that it's not the win that's everything. It's who you are in the process and your intentions. That will pull you through.
And to kind of circle back a little bit too, is we kind of gave you kind of the 10,000 foot level, and I kind of want to go a little bit down more to the practical. Is if you're finding that you're hijacked in that way, and I use that term specifically, is it may be time to look at the positive intelligence community, which talks about saboteur and sage. The saboteur, the big one, being the judge. The judge is the one that actually keeps us from recovering, because it's that you should have done it better. You should know better. The judge. You should know better. You should have been better. You should have been different than who you are. And if you have a chance to look into some of his work, I think that it would actually help you shift your perspective a little bit on it. Even for me, who I considered myself generally a very positive person, I'm like, wow, there's some areas that I need to clean up, because I can be hypercritical, hyper rational of myself and others. And it's like, okay, so how do I get in this place of compassion, even though that is a core value of mine? How do I re-engage that and compassion for others and compassion for myself? And it falls kind of back into that whole grace concept. And it's a really great perspective to take whenever we find that it takes us longer and longer to recover emotionally or intellectually from those spaces that are failures.
Michael, who's the author?
It is Shirzad Shamin. I'll actually put a link to, he's got a book and a program, but I'll put a link of that into the chat here. But from a practical standpoint, it's one of the things that I've seen that is the best. It's not just think positively. There is more to it. It is actually digging into and listening to those, in some ways, those aspects of ourself or archetypes, those different perspectives that a lot of the psychological community is really talked about, and this gets really practical. So things like an avoider or a stickler or hyper rational or hyper vigilant or hyperachiever, all of those are saboteurs, those things that lie to you that they're important for you to be able to get to the next level, when it really is a lie, versus coming from this place of exploring and being curious is very different than that. So it's something that I know I've gained a lot out of.
And that's the Positive Intelligence book that I've seen a couple times lately.
Yeah, it's a book and a program.
Okay.
There's a couple of different aspects you can engage with that in.
Yeah, I don't have a system in place, so maybe I should make an intentional effort to direct my thinking a certain way when things go wrong or go poorly. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And I would imagine that maybe they're not going wrong or poorly. You just figured out another way that won't work. So again, your framing. So absolutely. And that's okay. For those of you that don't know me very well, I have figured out infinite number of ways that living with a rare, potentially fatal blood disease isn't working for me. I have found so many times that I have failed to live up to my body's potential. You say, well, that's easy. You were born with some disease and it's not the same thing. No, it is the same thing when something prevents you from, you feel like something could threaten to prevent you from achieving your dreams or achieving your goals. Or you have 9 ducks in a row and the 10th duck just wipes all the 9 out. So many of us have goals that we're trying to achieve in the short term. Some of us take on goals in the long term. Some of us have lifetime goals. When I speak to my very beloved friends who deal with addiction, that wake up knowing that there's something there, I always question them, are they labeling themselves? Are they allowing themselves to heal? And they say it does take something akin to grit every day to stay self-aware of their natural tendencies, their natural saboteurs that Michael just discussed, because, they're in that book as well, for sure. So I think self-awareness, and yes, Sharon, a process really, Tony Robbins talks about a pattern interruption. And so what happens is when it comes to the world of neuroscience and neuroplasticity, when they say that Hebbian law says that when nerves fire together, they wire together. So we create patterns and habits, not just in our actions and behaviors, but in our thinking. And the more that we think a certain way, the easier it is to default to that pattern the next time and the next time. And so having that system for you of saying, okay, instead of going through that circuitry that is worn from a grassy knoll into a superhighway now that you're getting, you said you feel like you're getting good at this failure, then what is the immediate process that you can do? And it's even if you catch yourself having those negative thoughts, okay, it's time to do something else. And let's look at what didn't work and why. Let's figure out when you start actually writing something down, you'll also see patterns in action and figuring out analytically what's not working. So, and it also may, it may be one of those components of self-sabotage. It also just may be a learning curve. It could be very simple as that. So.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that if you're challenged with doing this on your own, it may be time to get outside help, either from a accountability group, a coach, a therapist. It may be time to actually get someone else's eyes on this. Maybe even just sharing the challenges with a friend so you can talk it out loud may also be another way of actually breaking this down into the smaller pieces so that you can actually clean those pieces and put them back together.
I definitely agree with that.
Because I think that many times, at least for me, whenever I'm up against that, I keep failing at this, is because I've got my blinders on of this is how it's supposed to be. And someone from the outside can say, well, maybe if you just turn this a little this way, or maybe you shift the way you're approaching it like this, it can have a huge impact on that.
That brings up an important point, that in grit, we're not saying to like buckle down and weather through no matter the cost. Sometimes the way we're moving, it either A, isn't in flow with our life trajectory, or we are swimming, against the grain needlessly. Other times it could be that we're committed to a process instead of the outcome, and we're simply doing it the wrong way. So within that conversation of grit, there's still a wide open field for you guys to play, to create, to figure out what is and isn't working. I always joke, and I picked this up from someone else, that, some people, they have methodolatry where they're so committed to this certain way they think things have to be done, that it becomes a religion to them. And that might make it harder if there are infinite other ways. So just a thought for you. You guys have any feedback or questions so far?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. Many people among you I see are just above my age. You are just older to me. I'm just 20. Maybe my experience is not that much, but I would like to say one thing as a medical student, that you people might have heard about placebo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically the whole thing is that it's all in our head. When we change the things that we are going through in our head, the whole world changes.
Yes, and many people wiser than us have said that, Saman. Thank you for that input. I appreciate that. Absolutely.
So, and I think that's really kind of a good way to kind of transition. And we've touched on this a couple of times as well. And, focusing on the goal, I think, is really important. Getting really clear on what that goal, that destination, that way of being, that vision for a category or our whole life is really important. And really kind of putting that into words, putting that into a way where it does become something that we order from the catalog of the universe, where we're actually laying out what our dreams are, where we want to be, and how we want to get there. That to me ends up being the North Star, is I'm going there. Either get behind me or get out of my way, because this is where I'm going. And that is kind of what I'm doing right now as far as practicing grit in my life. Is I've got this vision, this place where I want to be. And with the placebo effect, it is that it's the self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. Is if I'm aiming for success, I'm much more likely to succeed. If I'm aiming for failure, then I'm more likely to fail. It's that if you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're probably right, I believe is attributed to Henry Ford.
Yep.
So really kind of, and I'm gonna put this out here for you, Suzanne, because I know that you tend to go this place too, is that if we keep heading towards something that we think that we want, and it does consistently grow, it becomes a gross failure every time, then maybe it's a chance to back up a step or maybe two and really look at the premise, the beliefs of what we feel about ourselves and feel about the goal, and maybe look at that next. If the failure keeps coming up in these various ways and we continue feeling bad about it, if we continue blaming ourselves about it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the piece that I wanted to kind of tie in with this grit thing, is it's not going out and doing the same thing over and over again, the same way, failing each and every time. Grit also requires us to be creative in how we're going to approach that. It requires us to not get out of that comfort zone of, well, I only ever eat food with my right hand. No, that's really basic, but have you ever tried to eat it with the other hand just to see if you can? Or walk through your house with your eyes closed to see if you can navigate through your life as well as you think you do? And those little changes, those little pieces of grit do build up as you gain confidence in yourself on what you're capable of doing. So then you're actually doing things much greater than you ever thought possible. And that motivation, to me, many times does come from, hey, I can do this that seemed hard before, and now it's easy. So how then do I push the next level of what is hard now until that becomes easy, by trying different ways to approach it, by being creative, by exploring, by navigating around your challenges. And so I guess my question that I wanted to kind of end for each of you here is, what is that one difficult thing that you want to achieve that you've been avoiding? What's that thing that you know is going to require more grit than you may think you have?
And guys, he's not asking a rhetorical question. Put it into the chat. Put it out there. Put power into your thoughts, into your dreams, into the universe. What is something that's so big you've been avoiding or putting off, or you're scared to death it's not going to come true? What is that big thing?
I want to share something.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. As I joined medical university, I am the only sister in my home. I have younger siblings, but being the elder one, I didn't face any kind of problems in their behavior by the siblings. But once I joined the hostel, there was some kind of self-centeredness, selfishness, and everybody was just a part of race. Everybody had to achieve something, and they were just insensitive to what was happening in their surroundings. Either someone was sick, either someone was suffering emotionally. So I didn't have that kind of practices at home, and I didn't go there with such practices. But when I found such things there, I kind of felt really disturbed, and it took me 3 years to realize that you have to be focused on your goals despite all the insensitivities, despite all the self-centeredness, and despite all the hurdles. You just need to say to every distraction that comes your way that I have to reach my goal. The whole crap can wait.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that's such a good lesson, and I love that you've learned it this young, my friend. I think that's fantastic. Is anyone else would like to contribute as well? Thank you for sharing that.
It's Ramona here. I was touched by something that that Michael said early on about going up the mountain, and a lot of people wanting to take the easy way up first and then the hard way down. And it occurred to me that even when it feels like you're exerting little energy, you still get tired. and your body still gets worn. And so coming down the harder way, first of all, you don't have the same perception. You don't have the same angle of view. So you can't see things going down the same way that you see them coming up. And so, you're more likely to fall, sprain your ankle, maybe even break a leg or break a neck, going up the easy way and coming down the hard. So, and the other thing I was thinking is that when you're going up the hard way, you build character, you build strength, you build courage, you build a lot of things that you wouldn't have going up the easy way. So that when you get to the top of the mountain, when a strong wind comes to blow you off, you're more likely able to secure your position there and retain your balance there, retain your efforts there, retain what you've gained, than if you had just taken the easy way up. And I just thought that was brilliant, the way that you talked about that, Michael. And I just wanted to emphasize that. And as far as grit's concerned, I've been writing my book now for a year. And when I first started writing it, it's a fictional memoir. And when I first started writing it, it was very cathartic. Everything was just pouring out of me. And of course, at some point, you have to like structure the book so that other people want to read it. And it takes work. And
Yep.
and now
Not that fun anymore.
Yeah, I know. The fun is gone. And
Yeah.
and it's I'm sitting here wrapping it up. I've got 3 or 4 more chapters left of 35, 36 chapters. And I'm like, this is great. This is wonderful. But I'm in that grit stage, and
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I know so many people who have written a book and they said it was one of the hardest things they did in their life. And, hence the career of ghostwriting, right?
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. Has anyone else had, want to talk about something that they're having, something big that they're taking on, a huge growth goal, something they say if your dreams and your goals don't scare you, then they're not big enough. Michael, what's the biggest thing you're working on?
So the big goal that I set for myself so far is to transition into my business full time by the end of this year, which is a big thing for me because it's certainly a stretch based on what I'm doing now. So I'm working a job and growing my business, and I want to wrap up the job and work solely on my business, which means that I need to take on things like marketing, which I saw Sharon mention, actually building the systems for my coaching practice to be able to reach more people, to actually have it in a way where there's enough of a community that I'm serving, where it actually does become that growth model for me. And it's something that I've touched on 2 or 3 years ago whenever I first started things, but now the curve's actually getting towards that steep part of the hill. It is time to actually climb the steep part of the hill so that I can get to the easy way down on the backside. So that's what I'm tackling right now.
And guys,
what about you?
He has a time sensitive goal, right? Look at that pressure point. He applied it, by the way, to himself. He chose that pressure point. Okay. So this is not a vague when I get it done. This is intentionality. This is also, and please, if you're paying attention, this is something important. It also requires reverse engineering. To meet his goal at said time, he will have to work backwards to know what are the milestones that need to be achieved financially. He's going into coaching full time, right? So client base, technically, what are his systems set up? What will that have to look like? What will lead generation have to look like? There is a lot more to this when you take on a big goal. Michael, is that scary?
Absolutely. Especially it's scary for many different reasons. One, because it's systems that I'm not familiar with how doing it.
Yep.
Also, I've got a proclivity as well for not doing things the way that everybody else does them. So marketing automation is an antithesis to what I do. So I want this to be personal, authentic, and realistic, and still reach people that I haven't actually ever spoken to. So that's going to require effort. It's going to require me to show up more authentically as myself and be okay with the number of people who are going to say no, as well as being afraid of the number of people who will say yes, because then I'm going to get my stuff together enough that I can serve them at the level that I plan to. So
yes,
absolutely.
the fear of success, the oh shit, what happens now button, right? Guys, and I personally, I don't mean to ask all the questions and not fess up. I tend to take fewer huge risks. Like my level of risk taking mostly would scare the bejesus out of people, but I don't take them as frequently, which maybe is a problem I need to work on. But when I take them, they're really big. We're talking move to a foreign country where I don't speak the language, learn the language, and build a consultancy. We're talking blow up your life, quit your comfortable job with a cushy retirement, sell your condo, and start a new life in a different city. Right? So my level of risk taking is large. And because of the nature of destruction involved in them, right, they don't happen like every day, or I'd be a hot mess, or more of a hot mess, if that's possible. But I take big risks and I go all in, life in, body in, finances in, all the way. And you know, I have big, scary goals, really scary goals. They could keep me up at night if I let them.
And the beautiful thing here is that both ways are right for the right person. No one way is universal. Right. So it's one of the beautiful things I love about the Lifebook community is that we say is do your best in your circumstances based on where you want to go and who you want to become.
That's right. And that is, we're all different. We're all, you know, have different levels of risk tolerance. Mine is quite high, and Michael's is different. I call him the smooth jazz, and I'm usually like the fire. But there are all different ways, but neither of us are advocating for standing still. Neither of us are anti-grit. Michael hasn't talked about it today, but he blew his life up. He blew his world up. In fact, both of us shook the trust that everyone we knew had in us, to the point where we weren't sure how many people were ever going to believe in us again. That rebuilding, doing the work, taking those steps that they don't take weeks. It's not about the cold freaking shower at the damn gym. This is about rebuilding life. This is about building big dreams. This is about Michael leaving the safety of a job that he's actually good at to go into an unknown world that he can impact lives. This is about showing up when you don't feel like it. This is about editing that book and getting that done when you're just sick of looking at it. Right? Saman, this is God bless that you learned those lessons early. You have to focus and to every one of you, as the world threatens to implode, you're on your game, because that's going to pull you through. And we know things aren't that pretty right now. But we all know that you were born for something great. You were born to impact lives. You were born to make a difference.
Because it doesn't take grit to blow up your life. It does take grit to rebuild it.
Yes. Blowing up your life can happen very quickly.
One choice can actually change everything.
That's right.
Good, bad, or indifferent. So, keeping in mind those choices as you make them is very important.
Guys, it's like trust, right? It's so easy to break and difficult to build back. Yeah. So tell me, guys, in the chat, or you can pop on live. Are you willing to do difficult things? Are you willing to risk failing? Are you willing to risk success? Are you willing to risk when everyone else thinks you're crazy for digging in when, it would have been so much easier to give up? We love that you're here. We love that you gave us your time on your Saturday. But we also know grit is the right conversation for today. It's not the sexiest. But you know what? When you come back from that gym and you are sweaty and you feel amazing and you no matter what stage, you have that inner roar because you did it, then you do it again. And then you get up and you do it again. And suddenly, guess what? Grit isn't grit. It's part of your identity because you are now somebody who isn't afraid to do difficult things. And so what grit is that we're talking about that muscle memory to take those steps repeatedly until, and it will happen, guys, it sinks in. And suddenly, you can do anything. It'll become part of your identity. It may not be a good thing, but now I'm only ever excited professionally by big challenges, by big goals, by things that stretch me beyond. I mean, I'll go through periods where I hang out and chill and relax, right? But they're brief. And then I'm ready to grow because I realized difficult things are when I become the greatest me.
So I know we're getting ready to wrap up here. So I want to kind of honor everyone for showing up and giving us your time.
We love to see you.
We enjoy these as conversations. We enjoy even the small intimate groups, because I think that for me, I know I gain a lot more when I know that I'm connected to the people that are here. We do this type of conversation every month, talking about something that to us needs to be part of the conversation. So last month we talked about commitment. Next month we're talking about accountability. Both of those are two core pillars for my coaching business. So these are important things for me because I do think that I need more commitment and accountability in my life, because that's when I show up. That's whenever I am living at my best. As much when people are helping me understand where my commitment is failing and can give that to me from this, not a judgmental place, but hey, did you look at this? What else does that mean for you?
That's true. And that accountability partner can also help you with grit, guys, because you won't feel it. It's not pretty. It's not fun all the time. Sometimes it just sucks or you're hurting and you still got to get it done. You don't feel like it. So definitely, we love it. Guys, any other thoughts? We don't want to leave you high and dry. Anyone else, if you'd like to share, the floor is yours.
In the end, I want to share one thing. The religion I believe in, it's in our holy book. It says that life happens to you the way you think it will happen to you. You
That's
get
very
what you
wise.
attract. So at the end, I would just say the same thing, that it's all in our head. We want to change, we should change things at the level of our head, then the things around us will also change. Thank you so much. And it was
Nope.
great experience having you all here.
We're
Thank you.
happy to have you, Simon. Thank you for showing up. We love
Thank
it.
you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Ramona again. I just like to say, you know, when you were talking about balance earlier, what occurred to me is we're all born with the ability to achieve it. But it's not until we get on the bike or try to ballet or any of that, you know, that we actually are able to do it. And I think that that's probably the way that we could begin to look at everything else that we want to accomplish, is that we are born with the ability to achieve it, or we willing to put in the work to get it done.
Exactly.
And that's the big question for each of us.
Exactly. Thank you for contributing. Anyone else? We'd love to see you guys. Guys, we do this every month. You know, each month is a little bit different. Sometimes we bring on guest speakers as well. So you never know what's next. We'd love that you followed us on LinkedIn. We do have a LinkedIn group that we post the events in, but you can always find us otherwise. And we are in your Lifebook community as well, as you know. So Michael, with that, any parting thoughts or shots?
I don't think so. I think the big thing for me is that keep in mind that the things that you want in life are just beyond that thing that right now you're not willing to take on. And it requires grit.
And guys, it's also the other version of you. On the other side is a great version of you. So we are so grateful for your time, and I love to see all of your faces, even if it's your picture. I'm grateful to see it, and we hope to see you again, guys. We will send you a feedback form of anything we'd love to know, anything we could do better and how we can improve. And we hope you have an amazing weekend, and go take big bites, go take big chews, go do big things. Okay, loves.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye, Johannes. Thanks for coming.